What up, y'all? So, Osu finally slightly recovered and bring to you part 2 of the Kohaku combo theory guide I'm putting out on the channel. Sorry it has taken so long. Quite literally, after I recorded the first video, I went to 5 straight weeks of work. I'm on my third of 3 days off, haha. And the first 2 were basically spent on Vortex Gallery work and trying to do other stuff that I needed to do in the middle of working 5 straight weeks. So, yeah. Finally here at part 2. Here in part 2, we're going to talk about optimizing the BNB, where we're going to make the BNB do even more damage than it should through understanding what are the 2 major damage parts of the BNB. I was thinking of a word to say instead of part, but think of one. Then we're going to go into the micro optimizations that you do to add more damage to the BNB. Then we're going to go into combo changes. With the combo changes, we're going to talk about adding in more feint loops, the one rule break to something I'm going to talk about very early in this video, and we're going to talk about one additional change. It's nothing you haven't seen before, at least if you watched the first video, but stuff. Knowing that this video is about optimizing, we need a damage base, and for that, it's going to be the BNB. One minor issue. The thing about the BNB is the fact that I have noticed with no crit, no reduce, in match, in training mode, does not matter. I have randomly noticed times where the BNB will do either slightly more or slightly less damage than the standard value that I see with it. I do not know what causes this at all. I've not had time to test it. But for this video, as a damage basis, since it's an optimizing video and we need something as a base value, we're going to take the BNB that I do and use its base value that I standardly see. 2A, 2B1, 5C, 5CC 3 hits, 236A, 236B, charge JC, air dash JC, JB, 2C, 1 rep of Bato loop, into 4B, 2C ender, 5674. This will be our damage basis for this whole entire video. From here, let's talk about the 2 major parts of the BNB that do damage. One is a Bato. So, a Bato in general, once used in first string of your combo, adds to the overall combo about 200 to 300 plus. It's hard for me to properly gauge how much without doing a route. So if I'm calculating this correctly from just straight damage calculating in my head, pretty sure it being taken out of the BNB, it does 322 damage or somewhere around there. So that means the damage without it in the BNB should be 5352. $5,329. Close. Pretty sure that is actually part of the variance, but I'm not stressing on it, it's whatever. So a Bato, once you're doing the BNB, pretty crucial because the fact that, as you saw, that is 300 plus. That is a pretty significant damage, right? Same way for the second part. So with 2C specifically, which is the second part of major damage changes to the BNB, I have to word this 2 ways for this to make sense. I feel like it has to be understood on both the data way and the standard way. 2C, its P1 value is drastically worse than its P2 value. So you want to avoid P1 usage at all costs, but you want to abuse P2 as much as you can. The easier way to put that is the fact that you want to avoid using 2C in your first string of your combo, but want to use it as much as you can afterwards. Easiest way to showcase this is to do the former, then do the latter, right? So I'm going to do the BNB, replacing 5CC with 2C. Then I'm going to do the BNB with 5CC, but take out the 2C I do in the middle as a catch. Unless my hands say no. I was expecting to drop in this video anyway, but not there. So 5183. So we're talking about near a 500 damage difference. Pretty drastic. Like 500 is way more than enough to determine a kill or not. In this game, I really like to say there's a lot of cases where only 100 will determine a kill. So 500 is really pushing it. Anywhere within 500 to 1000, that is literally, you are really losing damage. And that's just from using 2C in first string instead of 5cc. Now, on the other hand, removing the 2C in the middle and still doing the BNB as standardly intended, we're now talking 200 and change, which is not as bad, clearly, but still pretty bad in hindsight. So, keep in mind that for the most part, until the latter half of 2C, the first string is what really determines a lot. A Bato being in, and if you use 2C in your first string, that determines a lot of your combo damage. And in general, we're going to understand that going forward, the first string is the most important string of any Kohaku combo. I do mean that. Whatever happens first string determines the rest of your combo. I will stress this in the next video. I really mean it. The next video, I will talk so much about this, and I will talk about gravity. So, this is where I'm going to put this disclaimer. If you have not went to the first video and looked at the gravity section of that video, please do so. I could care less if you look at me doing the BNB breakdowns and me talking about certain character issues or whatever. Literally, gravity is the one thing I want to hit home in this whole video series. The Kohaku's hard part, that comes from understanding gravity. The more you understand how C Kohaku interacts with gravity, the easier your life will be, because that is literally what makes her hard. But now we're out of this disclaimer. Let's go from the BNB at base level that we were just doing into the micro optimization. So the first micro optimization we're going to talk about is 5cc, specifically doing less hits on it and or just doing 5C by itself. In general, Kohaku does have a multi-hit rule where cases like plants and etc., anything that multi-hits will scale your damage, is part of the way she works. Perfectly fine. With that being stated, 5cc is a case. You cannot avoid using 5cc. It's a standard tool that you'll have to use because of the fact that it vacuums. Or to be more specific, it vacuums Kohaku into her opponent, which works as a combo stabilizer because of the fact that her pushback on base 5C pretty far, like she has decent pushback on basically all of her normals. That being the case, 5cc ends up being a stabilizer to get you close enough to do certain things because it's too far. Right? That's all fine and dandy. I'm too far away. It turns into an issue, right? So with that being the case, what you want to do is you want to keep in mind that if you have the ability to, you do 5C by itself. If you don't have the ability, you do 5cc, but you do just the first hit, which still drastically changes damage for you, as I will showcase now. That's more than that. $5,895, so we basically gained 220 plus. Right? Drastic change. Like, literally, the smallest change, but it's drastic in damage. Same way, let me actually use Abato. Now we're closer to 6k. That's from raw 5C by itself. So it matters. It really does matter. So, but the thing is, you can't avoid this. Like it's impossible to avoid. So with that being the case, you want to always try to minimize the amount of hits you're doing in 5cc and try to always just get the first hit that you're using. This will come back up later. Well, I'll just put that out now. This will come back up later. Now, from there, the other optimization, the God button. There's not enough to say about this button that I can put into just this video because I'm trying to contain this video to under 40 minutes. I expect this to be 30 minutes, 35. Kohaku 4B. This does your taxes. This drives your car. This does everything in like the earth, like anything possible. Like I can't even properly word this because of the fact that it's that broken of a button. I consider this button like top 3 normals in the game. Kohaku 4B, you just inserting this into a combo over any other button usually gets you at least 200 damage. That is how insane Kohaku 4B is. There's no other way to put it. I do mean like you just replacing it. Like you replace anything with it, you are usually getting now over 400. Like, I mean 200 plus, just because. The big problem with this button's addition though is the fact that it is pretty awkward in a lot of cases depending on what device you use to add it in, because of the fact that like 2A, 4B, you can't swing back, right? So you have to pass through neutral, which is not hard, but it is goofy when you're considering how fast-paced Melty can be, depending on the match pacing between you and your opponent, and /or how sudden it feels like you have the time to do a combo, so your natural pacing is way too high. So then it feels weird to try to attempt to pass through neutral because you want to try to avoid doing this. But at the same time, like once you can manage to get it in there, holy shit. We're at 5.8. That is literally me doing the BNB replacing 2B with 4B. We're at 5.8. Like, it is so absurd. And that's just with me doing the BNB standard with no changes. That's not considering perfect stringing, which is what I'd call it. And I'll talk more about it later in the next video than this. But the more perfect your string, the even more damage you get, like basically, as much as that is not proper English. And with that being the case, it's like, it's crazy to think of 4B because of the fact that just innately adding 4B adds damage just by itself. So the closer to perfect you are, the more annoying damage you're doing with this character. Because now with me being close to perfect in base level Kohaku combos, now we're at basically 6.2. That is how drastic that button changes. And that is not that much of a change. It's literally just replacing a normal with a normal. The same way, this is going to be a very minor change in hindsight. It really does not look like it does much, but it adds so much over time. Replacing 2A links with 5A links. The further you get into Kohaku combos, the more you are going to do linking. Like straight up. Like you will see it in this video in a second. But with that being the case of linking, 5A in general is just a better button than 2A. On top of the fact that it actually kind of works as a stabilizer. It is pretty consistent on fainting to use just because of the fact that it just comes out. Besides the case of Hisui. Isui is a very specific case where easiest way to put it is that she does not like getting hit by 5A on a regular basis. So she's like the one case where you probably will still use 2A. But 5A, once you put in more links over time, adds up significant amounts of damage that is actually pretty absurd. And it's easier to use. So it's kind of like one of those easy, like, well, if I don't have to do 2A, let me just do 5A, right? Because you just feint 5A, right? Instead of feint 2A, you're just, right? Very simple change. I did the extra A Bato on accident, but we went from 5674 to 5683. It's only 9 damage a difference. It's not that much. So it literally does not look like it does that much over time, right? Because it's like, well, 9 damage, how does that total up? Well, because of the fact that you add in more links, right? The more links you do, so the longer your combos become, the more damage you're going to get out of doing 5A instead of 2A. So with that, we have covered the micro optimizations I'm going to cover in this video. There are more, but the big thing I want to say is that these are the ones that pertain to the BNB and they're easier to execute. The ones that I will go into in the next video will be harder to execute, vastly harder to execute. The fact that it is a lot of, are you on point enough to do it type things is pretty crazy how those changes go. But before we even get more concerned with that video, and I will try to do a mini disclaimer at the end of this video further on the next video, we have now went through micro optimizations. Let's get into changes and extensions. So first, we're going to start in the corner because it's the easier one to showcase, and also because I talked about the next video, it kind of bleeds into the next video, so I want to show it first. So this is the one rule break. I think I mentioned it earlier, but if not, this is the one. You know how I said you want to avoid using 2C in first string at all costs? Well, that doesn't matter in this case because for some reason, the easiest way to put it is see, Kohaku doesn't suffer from rebeat penalty, so she doesn't lose damage for doing rebeats and combos, which is why Bato loop is so drastically a thing. With that also being the case, man, if you do it first string at the start of your combo, as I drop, yeah, it matters. Like, this is pretty crazy because that took the BNB up by 100 damage, which doesn't seem that much, but also you have to look at that meter gain. Because now we're talking about, I got 142 meter from just that route. And I didn't have a Bato in there, which can happen. I didn't do any other change, right? Because technically, if you want to optimally do this, it is actually this. And that's not considering 5A and all the other changes you could possibly do. But with that being the case, it is the easiest way where if you have your opponent cornered to gain even more damage than normal by just doing a simple extra thing. What I will say about this though is that it sets you up for later, it sets you up for table looping. There's a lot of options you have out of it. But the one thing I would say is that you probably actually don't want to use a Bato in them. The reason why is because a Bato scales gravity so heavily. I think I talked about it earlier, but if I haven't, go to the first video, watch the gravity section. I will talk more about this as a disclaimer at the end for the next video. But with that being the case, like, you want to avoid scaling gravity because of the fact that you're already doing so much in this combo, and now hit count scaling is now in effect. So because quickly at just like, I'd say the halfway point, you're now at the point where hit count scaling is now in effect. Like basically as soon as you start the next Bato loop, that is where hit count scaling is now in effect, and now it's kind of ridiculous that you scale gravity because now you really have to be on point. Now we go from there back to mid screen. My bad. So with us coming back to mid screen, we are now going to talk about the overall extension to this video that matters the absolute most. Feint loops. That hit backwards. So the thing about feint loops, and this is everything coming back. All 3 rules I said earlier for the BNB 5cc applies. These 2A instead of 5A applies. On top of I said all 3 rules. This one's the major part breakdown. Understanding that 2C is your best bet because there are other ways to do feint loops, right? You don't have to sit there and do it standard. Like a lot of people like do 2A, 2B, which is also pretty goofy to do because you can't do this naturally on standing with the timings. But 2A, 2B, I do this, etc. Like all of these ways of doing feint loop. Overall, at the end of the day, you doing a normal into 2C will get you the most damage. I do mean that. Great. It will straight up get you the most. Now, the things about this, though, is the fact that all rules apply, on top of the fact that doing multiple feint loops at the end of your combo is very gravity dependent. See how that word's coming up a lot? So the more you scale your gravity, the more you're going to have to really pay attention to your timing for loops. I'm going to be honest, I kind of suck at doing this without being optimal to begin with because gravity bonuses and etc. or gravity changes and etc. on top of the fact that once I'm doing it from the BNB, it's very unnatural to me because I actually don't use the BNB that much. I'm gonna be real, I just don't at this point. So we ball, let's showcase this. So first, let's do it as standard, as intended, just the true mid-screen BNB. I think I'm off a little bit. See what happens. Yeah, I'm off a little bit. So 5-3-40. That would actually be the base damage of the there is give and take depending on how many hits of, again, 5C, and that depends on your timings, etc. But with that being the damage basis, there's multiple things you can do because of the fact that, one, you can add in feint loops, as I will probably struggle to do that, and I might just end up skipping to doing it more optimal because that'll be easier. On top of the fact that you have to keep in mind the other rule, right? Because first string matters for setting your gravity. How many hits of 5C matters. If you're using 2A or 5A matters. Are you actually doing it properly and doing A normal into 2C instead of doing A normal into B normal, etc. All of that contributes to it. I dropped 2C somehow. I'm pretty sure I did 5-6-40 with the 2C hitting. It would have done at 11. That was at 5-6-29. But with me technically doing that improper, I went from 5-3-40 to 5-6-29 or 5-6-40, so I gained 300 damage, right? Cool. That's a reset. Oh man, I dropped because I'm too high. And then all of these problems come into place too, where now it's like your gravity management also is now a factor. And that's what makes it goofy, because now you have to consider all of the rules to truly get damage out of this. Which is not hard, you just have to really think about it. Because with me not doing something proper, I'm at near 5.8. I did not do the first string proper. I did basically everything else after that proper, but without doing the first string proper, I'm at 5.8. If I actually do the first string close to proper, because keep in mind, this pushback, so it actually is pretty hard to sit there and do this without it being just like straight B Bato, because keep in mind, even A Bato has pushback. So what I actually recommend if you're doing true mid-screen, being close to proper, is you just do 5cc. Not like that. We're basically at 5.9. We're literally 1 damage off. It's doing it close to proper. And that's not considering I did 2B instead of 4B and etc. So yeah, that is literally how feint looping works. And you can add feint loops in practically anywhere. It's pretty ridiculous how versatile they are. Like if you want more damage in a combo, quite literally, very few cases where you can't just add a feint loop in just because and it won't work. That is how versatile feint loops are. So that's why I'm considering it a combo extension, because literally you'll see me do it in the next video, because I use them a lot too for optimizing certain things. But in general, it's just that easy of an addition that also really doesn't take that much work besides gravity management. Like, gravity management is the only thing that really makes them annoying in this, because of the fact that if your gravity scaled too high, you have to do them extremely fast, right? Now, actually, I'll start mid-screen with this. The last change, and this is where it actually is a combo change, where we're talking true mid-screen, or not true mid-screen, we're talking about mid-screen the corner. I completely lost the ability to speak words. Haha. We're talking about mid-screen the corner, but we're going to do something we do in true mid-screen, which is this. So I talked about this actually in part 1. But the thing is, I didn't showcase where the change comes, right? I talked about doing it in the corner, but now you have the ability to actually swap this out instead of doing a full rep of Bato loop to actually gain more damage. It's actually kind of crazy that it does more damage at the end of the day because of the fact that you use 5cc. But it actually does a lot for you because the fact that it's like, man, as I drop. Now you have decisions to make. Like, he didn't jump that high in damage. We jumped up by, let's see, it was 577, 5674. So 80 and change ish. I'd like to say it's exactly 83. So with that jump, like, it's 83 damage. It doesn't seem like that much, right? But the thing is, you now have way more utility, and that's something too. On top of the fact that that's considering I did that as base BNB, gained more damage by 100 or 83, instead of I didn't do the rest of the optimizations I've been showing throughout this video. Because now, keep in mind, if I'm close to the corner, I should have done this. I now can take the corner, right? So this plays into setups, and this is something I'm going to talk about in the video. So now you have a lot of options, because now the fact that it's no longer limited to, oh, I need to stay same side. Like, no. You can now take the corner. And I'm pretty sure I didn't use a Bato there. Keep in mind that it did near 6.1k without me using Bato, right? So it did less damage than... So all of that plays, and that's adding damage, right? Like, you see it, I'm adding a lot of damage. Now, where does this really come into play, all this optimization garbage? So overall, if you can manage to sit there and get used to normally doing this, it does benefit you highly, because of the fact that I personally think outside of grounded neutral, Kohaku does struggle against most of this cast, because most of the cast have tools outrange her and or put her in positions where she's playing rather defensive or playing opportunistic. If you want my full opinion on Kohaku, I think I put it in the C Kohaku combo doc, which will still be linked in the description of this. Or, yeah, in the Kohaku combo doc, which will still be linked in the description of it. But the thing with this is the fact that when you're playing opportunistic is that you understanding how to actually truly like get the reap of your rewards or reap what you sow from these opportunities does matter, because of the fact that this is a character that is highly regarded as you get touched by her and you might lose the game. And the higher you can optimize just your basics, if you're only at basic level, it does matter, because as you see, me doing the basics in this, went from 5.6 or close to 5.7 drastically up to 6.2k at some point. Just because, like, that's still off 2A starter. This isn't most optimal Kohaku. This is just optimizing her further than what she's normally optimized at from BNB level. It's just further optimizing the BNB. So, pretty drastic changes. So once you start hitting someone for 6.2k at round start, which even with reduced is considered, it's still going to be like 5. Then they get hit again into like another 6k, 5k plus. It's like, man, they're basically died in 2 hits. That's not considering like, oh man, command grab and etc. that you also have access to, right? So it's a lot. Like, it's a lot over time, and that's why this video matters, because of the fact that even at base level, there's a lot to gain with Kohaku damage line. Now, let's talk about not base level. Let's talk about the next video, which will be titled The Abyss in this series. The thing about The Abyss is the fact that there is too much I'm going to open. That's the easiest way to put it. There's going to be way too much. It's going to feel like a vast amount of knowledge I'm going to dump. I expect the video to be at least an hour. I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of things I've not showcased. Besides, I've showed glimpses of Table Loop, but I haven't talked about the versatility of Table Loop, how you use it in all of its like cases. On top of the fact that I haven't talked about another thing, because I've talked about Bato Loop as a singular Bato Loop, but I haven't talked about double Bato Loop. And that also highly matters. On top of the fact that those other optimizations I haven't talked about, like when I get to any type of air hit optimization, there's going to be a lot. Because counter hits, you optimize them one way. If you are me, I highly do something very unique. Other people have seen it. I have not seen any other Kohaku successfully do it to the success rate that I do it, which is this air rebeat string, which is not that hard. But once you get a JA air to air, and then you take that into a full conversion to 5k plus, a lot of people start getting concerned. And that's something that I am pretty consistent in doing. And that's not me trying to brag. It's just saying I like over the time of like learning this character again and watching other people play her, I just seem to be the most consistent at it. On top of the fact that I have to talk about counter hit usage, which is something I'm more good at, and etc. I'm going to open up a lot of doors with this character in this thing. And yes, this is why that video will be an hour plus long. Will I expect you to sit through an hour? No. I will still have it timestamped the way I will have this video timestamped. But the thing is, there is going to be so much, so I need you to understand so much of these first 2 videos. Because all of the optimizations I do in this apply, the same way gravity extremely applies. I will be talking about gravity a lot, because a lot of advanced Kohaku is gravity management. I'm going to literally be starting that video about why I'm no longer going to use a Bato. Or specifically, after you saw this video, I will no longer be using a Bato in first string. Of course, you still have to use it when you need it, but I will not be using a Bato in first string, period, basically in the next video. I'm going to be opening way too many doors without it that we're going to literally focus on everything Y. So with all those changes and counter hits and etc., there's going to be so much to talk about that video will be long, and I recommend you go back through these 2 videos and truly understand what I'm putting down to understand anything being stated in that video. Nothing's hard. I'm not mentioning anything hard, but I am dropping a vast majority of knowledge about this character on you, and that's where it comes into. More specifically, the part of gravity is the thing I want to hit home across this whole series. Gravity management and gravity, how it relates to Kohaku, is the most important thing of the, man, Kohaku's hard. Yeah, it's not that she's hard as much as the fact that gravity plays so much into her, and if you don't understand how gravity works on both hit count scaling, her innate management of it, and how it affects and changes your combos, so then you have to be more prepared to do certain things, that's where that comes into play. And that's why I'm doing this long disclaimer at the end of it. Because once we come back to just this video, right, you gain a lot just from understanding, well, if I'm punishing somebody, right, regardless of his counter hit or not, if I pay attention to the rules, I'm gonna do a lot, right? Man, I don't need to use 2C in per string. So how would I ideally punish someone if they DP bad? 2B, 4B, 5C into stuff? Yeah, that sounds about right. $6.5. Right? That's not that, but it's nothing crazy in this video. But the next video, you're going to see me start breaking 7K. Like, I'm just going to be real. I'm going to start doing 7K just because. This is a character where I do think she is the only character in the game where she regularly can do 7K just because. Even F. Baki, as much as she can just randomly kill you with an infinite, keep in mind the execution barrier for her is actually an execution barrier. While for C. Kohaku, I don't feel it's an execution barrier as much as it's an understanding barrier, on top of just being able to, like, all right, what parts of her combo theory can I abuse and not? So with that, I'm going to end this video for y'all. Thank you for turning in. I expect this to still be, as I assume, oh, it's approaching 40, my bad. I probably did this disclaimer too long because I probably ended the actual video on time, but disclaimer got long. But whatever. Thank you for tuning into this long video and coping with the fact that it took forever for me to drop it. I hope the new mic panned out because of the fact that I've been meaning to order a new mic, but it took forever because, again, too busy. So I hope you could hear everything, but we ball. Thank you for tuning in. Later.